Page IN 42, we're going to finish up our lesson on finding the volume of pyramids. Formulas we talked about yesterday. So the one formula they'll be giving you on the iLearn test, I'll also give this to you on your tests. Volume of pyramids 1/3 capital B H. Remember, capital B is the area of the base. And so our bases here typically is going to be either a rectangle or a triangle. So you will have to memorize those formulas for the area of a rectangle and area of a triangle. You've worked with those quite a bit, so shouldn't be any problem there. So let's look at the do you know how number 4. So they're asking us what the volume of this square pyramid is. So if you want to, you can just start out with your formula. And then think about the base. They're calling it a square pyramid. The base is a square. Remember, a square is a type of rectangle. Area of a rectangle, we just mentioned a minute ago, is length times width. So this would be the formula we'll be working with on number 4. Again, highly recommend you write the formula down, then change out for whatever type of base you have, and then start substituting numbers in. A lot of times people want to just jump right into the problem and they think they've got to just get the numbers in there right away and they got to just get their answer as quick as they can. And they get it quickly, but a lot of times it turns out to be the wrong answer. So let's pace ourselves a little bit here and make sure we get the right answers when we're doing these. So we can substitute in looking at our base. We know the length and width are both 7 and the height is 8. Make sure the height is going straight up and down like we talked about. If it's not going straight up and down, you have to figure out what that height is for your pyramid. Okay, at that point, if you want to, go ahead and put those over 1s and you can multiply straight across. Multiplying the denominators together would be 3. So that would be 392 over 3, and then we can divide that out. This one's not going to come out nicely if you divide it out. Remember, if you're allowed to use a calculator on your one calculators, you can change that to a mixed number. Otherwise, if you don't have a calculator that changes it nicely for you, then you can just work it out by hand. So if you do that on the calculator, you divide it out, you'll get 130.6 repeating. Last digit's rounded is why it's changing to a 7. But you can change that over to 130 2/3 cubic inches. So number 5, they want the volume of this triangular pyramid. So triangular pyramid, same idea. We can start out with our formula that they give us. And then we need to think about what our base is and what the area of that base is. So our base is a triangle. Area of a triangle is half base times height. And again, we end up with 2 heights here basically. So I'm just going to change this to a capital H. We have the height of the triangle. We also have the height of the pyramid. And then it's up to you what you want to do. If you want to clean things up a little bit here before you get started, you can. If you want to go ahead and get started, that's fine. But if you like on these, you can multiply 1/3 times 1/2 is 1/6. And then if you want to go ahead and just start substituting numbers, that's fine. So depending how you look at it, you might say the base of the triangle is 6 and the height is 4. If you said the base was 4 and the height was 6, it's going to come out the same, so no worries there. And then the height of the pyramid is 3. So at this point, very similar to what we did in the last problem, we can put all the whole numbers over 1, and you can go ahead and multiply. Since you're multiplying all these, if you want to reduce like factors first, you can. Otherwise, you can multiply it all out and then divide it. So if you multiply that all out, you should get 72 over 6, and then when you divide that would be 12. So 12 cubic feet would be the volume of that pyramid. So we're going to look at some problems here that's on this other worksheet that I've maybe given to you. Number 9 is what we're going to look at to start with. This problem, they're kind of giving you a step-by-step. They don't have to do that, but they are telling us on number 9 we're first going to have to find the height of the pyramid and then find the volume. They could have just given you this picture and said find the volume, and then it'd be up to you to figure out that that's not actually the height of the pyramid there. Round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So we did at least one problem like this before, but I want to make sure we understand what's going on here. So if you want to think about your volume formula, 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So since our base here is a rectangle or a square, then area of that's going to be length times width. They really should have made things clearer here. We're going to make an assumption that they should have told us. They should have put marks on the sides or something to show that this is a square base, or they should have put another 3 centimeters down there. But anyway, your length and width would both be 3. And then the question just is what the height is. And like I said, we don't want to get in a hurry here. A lot of times people get in a hurry and they're just trying to fly through these problems as quick as they can and get the answers as quick as they can, which tend to be the wrong answers then. The height is not 8. That's our slant height we talked about yesterday. So just remember how we talked about this yesterday is that we're going to have to form a right triangle. We're going to form a right triangle here, and then we're going to use that in order to figure out what the height of this pyramid actually is. So on this right triangle, we've got the base of this triangle. If we go straight up from the tip of the pyramids down, straight down to our base, that goes right in the middle of that square, the very center of that square actually. And so if this was 3 centimeters all the way across here, that would make this dimension half of that. So that's going to be 1.5. And again, we can get that by taking 3 and dividing it by 2. Whatever that number is, we'll take half of it. That'll give us that dimension. The 8 I already know, and then the height is what I'm trying to find. So I know it's a bit of a mess sometimes if we try and draw that in the triangle. So if you want to redraw it out to the side so you can see clearly what's happening without all the distractions, may not be a bad idea. And at that point, in order to find what the height is, we need to use our Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Again, the c is the hypotenuse. It's the longest side on our triangle, and it's always across from the 90-degree angle. So on this triangle, 8 would be our hypotenuse. H, you could either put it as an A or a B. It doesn't matter. It's one of the legs. And then 1.5 would be the other leg of our triangle. And now we need to just work this out and figure out what h is equal to. So first thing, let's square some numbers here. So if we square the 1 and 5/10, we get 2 and 25/100, 2.25. And then we square the 8, which is 64. So now in order to get the h squared by itself, they're adding, so we can subtract 2 and 2500ths. If you were doing this by hand, you'd need to make sure your decimal points were lined up. So we subtract is 61.75. At that point, the h is being squared, so we need to take the square root. When you take the square root, again, technically we should add plus or minus in front of that. Even though we can't have a negative height, we're going to cross it out. Since that square root doesn't come out nicely, I'm just going to keep it there so I don't have quite as many decimals to deal with when I'm going to figure my volume. So height is square root of 61.75, and now we can just substitute that in our formula. Didn't leave quite enough space there, but multiply straight across. We'd get a 3 in the denominator. In the numerator, 3 times 3 is 9, and we can just put square root of 61.75 behind it. And then at that point, you can go ahead and multiply the numerator part together, divide that by 3. That should be our volume. The directions here said they want us to round to the nearest hundredth. So if you work that out, you should get about 23.57 cubic centimeters. And again, what you may want to do is actually get the answer for the numerator and then divide it by 3. If you don't do that, if you want to try and do it all in one step, to try and do it all in one step, what you need to make sure you do is put an end parenthesis on your square root. Otherwise, the calculator thinks you're still under the square root with the part where you divided by 3. And so that's why some of us are coming up with different numbers than that. One other piece here of the book on this worksheet, they were asking for the height. So exact would be square root of 61.75, or otherwise if you did the nearest hundredth, that would be 7.86. Like I said though, for finding the volume, you'd want to keep it as square root of 61.75. For putting in your answer here, you know, depending what options you have, you may want to just put that as 7.86 would be okay. Number 14, the Good Work Construction Company is building a concrete sculpture in the shape of a square pyramid for a hotel's outdoor atrium. Dimensions of the sculpture are shown in the figure. Concrete costs $3 per cubic foot. How much will the concrete for the sculpture cost? All right, so they're talking about cubic feet of concrete. Cubic feet is dealing with volume. Cubic units always volume. So we can think about here our volume formula. It's 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. Our base, they're telling us this time for sure it is a square pyramid. Area of a square is length times width. And we can start substituting. So length is 60. Width is 60. The height they have not told us yet, so don't be too quick on this problem. This is the slant height again. So we need to figure the height going straight up and down this pyramid. So that's one of the missing sides. And then we need to substitute that in with our Pythagorean theorem. We can figure out what the height of the pyramid is. So since 50 is across from the right angle, 50 would be our hypotenuse. That's the longest side of this right triangle. And then the h is just one of the legs. So this is going to be 30 because it's halfway across. And then we can square these. And then we can subtract. And then we can take the square root. And we'll get 40. So the height's 40. And then we can substitute that back into our volume formula. So that's 144,000 over 3. When you divide that out, it's 48,000 cubic feet. And then it says concrete is $3 per cubic foot. So we need to multiply that by 3. And then that should come out as, well, we divided by 3 and then we multiplied by 3, didn't we? $144,000.